Built by horse players for horse players, AmWager is designed for speed, power, and ease of use. AmWager brings CAW-style tools to everyday horse players, including Dutching, ABC Ticket Maker, and Pro Percent, an advanced betting tool that lets you assign weighted percentages and build multiple structured wagers with a single click. Every month, AmWager turns the odds in your favor with 0% takeout on select tracks. These promos offer you up to $100 more for your winning bets and giving you value for your wagers not offered anywhere else. Rated 4.7 stars on Google with over 200 reviews, AmWager is trusted by horse players who expect more from their wagering platform. If you're looking for better tools and better value, you need AmWager. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit amwager.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 or older where applicable. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE.
Welcome to the Sport of Kings podcast, episode 369, sponsored by AmWager. Go to amwager.com to see all their promotions, including the upcoming 0% takeout on win bets at Saratoga on every Saturday in July, including this Saturday. So you can bet at a 0% takeout into the Saratoga win pool, in which the CAW teams are throttled down. That's about as player-friendly as you can find in 2026, so take advantage of it. As always, I welcome your feedback on Twitter/X. My handle is @Derby1592. And this week I'm joined by special guest Ryan Flanders, founder of Trip Note Pros, for a detailed discussion about races 7 through 11 at Saratoga on Saturday, which includes the Grade 2 Bowling Green Stakes. The show will focus on finding and exploiting value. We'll talk about our strongest handicapping opinions and how we might leverage those opinions using optimal betting strategies. Hi, Ryan. How's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm a little bummed out, man. You said Saturday races 7 through 11. I did Friday. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
That's really funny, but that's okay. If you have something you want to talk about on Friday, we can do that too. We're flexible on this show. I was going to ask you, are you ready for Saratoga? I know you've been gearing up with Trip Note Pros. I've been looking forward to this meet. So are you ready?
Always ready. I'm a little unprepared when the summer meets at Saratoga and Del Mar combine, because then where it gets a little time is difficult to find. I'll be getting up early, really early, and working throughout the week until Friday so I can keep my weekends. But it's about to get pretty gnarly here. In fact, I declined getting on air. You know, I do some part-time host work for Del Mar, or at least I should say I used to. Just not enough time in the day. It kind of ruined my life. So definitely we'll be focused on these two coming through this.
So we're not going to have you on the feed this year. Okay, well, that's too bad. We'll miss you there, but we'll have you. We'll get your trip notes if anybody's interested, and I'll give you a chance to kind of plug your product, since I know you're focused on Saratoga and Del Mar. So why don't you do that before I forget to do that?
Yeah, you know, I just I think that watching replays is. I still, to this day, I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now, where I've been selling this information. I think it's the most valuable thing there is. I think the workout reports are diluted in the pools. Horses get hit pretty hard. For whatever reason, watching horses in the morning seems to be more valuable than in the afternoon. And I just sit at my computer. I watch races very closely all day long, and then I share my findings to those people that subscribe. So, and you would be one of them, although I don't see you on the list yet, Chris. But most of my players are tournament players, very sharp cash players. And I think what they do is they validate or rather they use what I write to validate their own findings. So if they see something that looks interesting and I upgrade or downgrade a performance, they can jump in and watch the replay themselves, for 30 seconds and kind of corroborate what they see, or maybe I've uncovered something that they haven't, which happens quite a bit.
Yeah, that's kind of my own personal experience. So if people are interested in finding out more about your product, Trip Note Pros, where do they go?
TripNotePros.com. One trip, one note, two pros. Couple short videos on there to give you a glimpse of what it is that we do and how to use the product. Super simple. But yeah, it takes me countless hours to do it. So to kind of package that all up and offer it to people, and they don't have to spend the 10 or 15 hours or whatever it takes to do the card. Super valuable. If I were being paid by the hour, it would be very little by the hour.
Yeah.
Each user, obviously, I sell to a lot of people, so that makes it worthwhile. But if I did this for you only, Chris, and you bought a package, it would literally be like, 8 cents a trip or something ridiculous, where it wouldn't make any sense. But we've got a nice little following. It's been good, and here we are. We started back in 2020, and we're still going. So I'm proud of that.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about kind of Ryan's approach to watching races, he's the featured author in my new book, Bet with the Best, or Betting on Horses. You can find it at betwiththebestmedia.com. I have a section in there on trips, and Ryan's the featured person. Other people weigh in as well. And, there's a lot of other good stuff in there from a lot of sharp players, including Ryan. And Ryan gets some of his opinions on other things besides just watching trips in the book as well. So I encourage you all to go out to betwiththebestmedia.com if you want to improve your game and you haven't already gotten the book. And if you have and you like it, let me know what you think. And in fact, I will be doing a book signing at Saratoga in a couple weeks, July 24th. So if you're going to be at Saratoga in 2 weeks, come by my table and say hello. We can talk about racing, and let me know what you think of the book there. And if you don't have the book, I'll have some there as well. Or you can go online and get it. And I also will be the following month on Pacific Classic Day at Del Mar. I'll have a book signing. So hopefully I'll get to see Ryan at that time, and some of you as well. Stop by if you're on the West Coast, and you'll be at Del Mar on August 22nd on Pacific Classic Day. Looking forward to that as well. So I'm going to be at both of the premier summer meets this year, making the book an excuse to visit both Saratoga and Del Mar. So that should be fun.
Yeah, highly recommend that read. Haven't gotten all the way through it, but I've been picking through here and there, and tons of sharp minds, and uncovered a couple things that I'm going to be using as well when I do get out and play a little with my own money.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. When you are playing with your own money, and I know you fire, so talk a little bit about how you analyze races. If you want to focus on the trip part, you can, but even beyond just trips, what's kind of your approach to deciding, how you're going to analyze races and which races you might decide to bet and how you're going to bet those?
I like to play horizontally. I wish I liked to play more vertically. It's kind of been a learning curve for me. They're two totally different kinds of wagers, but I do like to play horizontally. When I handicap, I start with pace. I like to get an idea of what I think is going to pan out in that race, so that you can predict what good and bad trips are going to show up on this day, the race that you're playing, versus what you've seen in the past. So when I write about trips, looking in the rearview mirror, it's a little bit different because you have the luxury of hindsight, and you're trying to kind of paint that picture for the reader as to what happened. But when you're handicapping, obviously you're looking forward. So that's where I start. I start with pace. It's funny. I've got a buddy named Pasquale used to own the restaurant in La Jolla. I can name him Pasquale's. And he teased me one day. I used like 6 horses in a 10-horse field, and the top 4 horses that ran 1, 2, 3, 4 were none of mine. And he said, "You're like the worst handicapper I've ever seen in my life." And he still teases me to this day. But that gives you an idea of what I'm doing, because if I'm wrong about pace, I'm going to be dead wrong with what shows up after the finish. The race that I handicapped that I'm talking about, I thought there was going to be an absolute meltdown up front, and everybody sat. And so they just crawled around the track. They finished 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was nowhere. But that's where it starts for me. I try and predict what's going to happen. If I'm wrong about that, my opinion's going to be really bad. And if I'm right, I feel like I can uncover a lot of value based on that rearview mirror, uncovering talent that most even good players won't see if they haven't done the replay work.
Yeah, I talk about it in the book on the section on pace. I talk about race flow and race shape, and race flow is really the backward look at, which horses benefited from the race pace, which ones didn't, or if or was neutral. And then the race shape is really, like you said, the forward looking, trying to predict how you think the race will unfold and which horses are likely to benefit or be hurt by that the way the pace unfolds. And both are really useful. The looking back's a lot more reliable, right? Because it's already happened and you can kind of make a determination. It's a little easier to do. It's a little harder to predict, like you said. On paper, it may look like it's going to cook up, but then the riders decide differently, and what you described happens. So that's why when on that forward look of pace, you got to do it probabilistically. You can't say, well, I know this race is going to cook up. You can say it probably will. And, what's the likelihood that it will? And factor that into the way you price horses and stuff. It's not black and white for sure when it comes to pace analysis, in a forward-looking sense.
Yeah, and I like to take a look at the horse's body language as well. The jockey's intentions, that's real big for me. Some of these guys are aggressive, and even on circuits that I don't follow a lot, you get to learn them pretty quick. Like, okay, that guy's aggressive. Okay, yeah, Paco, he's going to put his grandmother over the rail to make the pocket, right? So there's certain things that guys do. They have their own tendencies, and that's part of the handicapping process. But the body language of a horse, if he doesn't like rating, even if he rated last time, let's say he's run once and he just looks slightly uncomfortable, even sitting outside. Like, let's say he's got good tactical speed, but he really doesn't want to rate. And now he's drawn inside. Well, I know he's a go, or at least I believe that he's a go. So little things like that go well beyond the pace figures. I use Timeform US. I think Craig Mokowski's brilliant. It's the only figure that I find valuable. In fact, I find others to be less than valuable and quite pitiful, actually. But his are just unbelievable. And they paint their own picture on pace and flow as well. I used to not be so into that when in dirt racing. Those big fluctuations in pace and flow I found pretty easy to identify in turf racing, especially in the routes. But man, Craig's numbers on dirt, they're gold. They're gold. If you get that upside down race where that pace, that tempo is increasing as the race goes along, it's so hard to gain in those races because those dirt races are just back downs, right? The horses aren't accelerating the way they can on turf. You can find turf races all the time that finish faster in the last 8 than they do in the beginning of the race. And that never happens on dirt. So they're just slowing down a little bit more. But if you see that upside down number with Timeform, it's like, okay, that is something that needs to be paid attention to, even if it doesn't show up as coded blue, right? So they're saying, hey, this is really slow, pay attention. Those ones that might go like, 85, 87, 91, 95, and they're all coded black. It's hard to gain in those races because you're almost always trying to circle and horses are slowing down in dirt races, so they're hard to pass.
Yeah, and you mentioned Craig. He's my featured player on the pace section in the book, and I agree with you. He's really sharp. So if you want to know more about the way Craig makes his pace figures and speed figures and his approach to the game, again, my new book, Betting on Horses, it's in there.
It's a must read for sure. There's so much that goes on into pay, like with computers and all that we've gotten our arms around over the last decade, and even before then. But for me, probably started about 10 years ago, maybe 12. You kind of have to have it. If you're looking at the form, the one that makes your hands all inky and gross, and you don't have access to run up and rail positions and all of that good stuff that Craig so accurately identifies and comes up with, in his own pace figures, you're at just a massive disadvantage. Like, I'd rather lick rust than play a horse race without a pace figure anymore. It's Greek. It's just Greek to me. I can't do it, and I won't do it. But I feel like you do have an edge with him that you wouldn't with others.
Yeah, and it sounds like in your trips, you're factoring pace as a big part of that trip note too, and rider intent and those kind of things. It's not just where they are on the track or the bias or the trouble. You're looking at pace and how that affected the horse and how the horse behaved and the rider behaved and that kind of stuff.
All of it. It's all important. To give you an example, if I see a first-time starter and a jockey is hell-bent from the gate, like they're trying first time out. If I see an aggressive jockey and he's kind of just giving a moderate hand shove out of the gate, as most first timers are going to be ridden on some level in those shorter races. But if I see a very aggressive rider that's just kind of moderately working out of the gate, I know that probably first time out wasn't the goal, or at least that's where my brain takes me. If I see IRAD and he is not putting the guy next to him over the rail to try and get to the rail, could be a prep off a layoff, right? So you get a guy that he knows those guys are steering their horses around the track. The good ones, I think, I've talked about this a little bit on X. I think jockey intent is absolutely huge. And if you know what their tendencies are, it's a big advantage and it paints a picture. And if you see a rider coming off of a layoff and he just has no real interest, he's just kind of hands-free and jogging, okay, fine, I'm going to go 4 wide. They're not trying. Like, you have to make a mental note of that. In fact, there's one race early, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it sure looked that way to me, where IRAD just kind of let his horse go 3-4 wide into the first turn. He never does that. And that is a piece of information that you have to book. You have to make a note because if you're not, you're at a big disadvantage, in my opinion. They're telling you what they do. You just have to know what their tendencies are.
You have to speak their language, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I saw IRAD coming into the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar 5 years ago or so, and he was right behind me in the parking lot. And I so wanted to idle and let him try and pass me and then herd him into a parked car, but I didn't do it. I still kind of regret that to this day.
All right, let's move on then. Off of that comment, I do want to quickly review the Saratoga betting menu. We talked about it last week, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But I do want to again note NYRA is the only track management team that's really making an effort to manage the CAWs. Other tracks are doing a few things, some of them, but NYRA's actually put guardrails on CAW access to all their pools, not just the win pool. So as players, we need to reward NYRA for doing that. Take advantage of it. We actually now have a choice. It's in your own best interest. You'll get better results if you play NYRA where they're putting those guardrails up, throttling the teams in the pools, than you will at some other track where they cater to CAWs. And you regularly get TO Elvis with those big odd swings after the windows have closed. And even better, collectively as players, we can send a message that we can change, and we will shift our play to the tracks that make an effort to manage those teams and away from the tracks that continue to cater to them. And we want to have a fighting chance, and so this is your chance to do that. If you don't, you just continue to do what you've always done and play into these CAW infested pools. Things are just going to continue to get worse, and all the complaining in the world will not matter. We'll get what we deserve, but it's not too late. So act now. Play Saratoga. There's no excuse not to. And if you want more information on takeout at tracks, you can go to my website, betwiththebestmedia.com, and I have a link to a spreadsheet that tells the tail on takeout at almost every track. You can see how widely it varies from track to track, and even within pools at a track. You can be a smarter consumer of bets, play the lower takeout bets. And in my new book, Betting on Horses, there's several sections dedicated to helping you better understand, how to compete with the CAW teams in this era of wagering that's quite a bit different than it was 10 or 20 years ago. All right, that's good enough for that. Let's get to the races. We're going to start with race 7, an allowance race, a mile on the inner turf for 3-year-olds and up. This race has probably will be a strong favorite in unit economics, trained by Chad Brown, ridden by Flavian Pratt. Both of those, you tend to get taxed on those connections. What are you thinking of this favorite, Ryan? What do you think of this race?
He could win. If he does, I'll lose. From a condition standpoint, he makes sense, but he struggled. He's been the chalk a lot. He barely got out of the non-winner 1 condition. Barely got beat the non-winner 2. A little over his head, I think, in that graded stakes at the fairgrounds, but did go favored that day. The layoff doesn't give me warm fuzzies, that's for sure. And like you said, I agree with you. I think he's going to be the chalk. I've got 4 horses that I marked here. I'm curious to see what happens from a pace standpoint. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you have these layoff horses on turf going a route of ground, a lot of times they can be keyed up and they want to go. And so I'm going to be – we'll see what shakes out with the 1 and the 4 horse on this race, Yinzer and Starship Titan. Yinzer, I think, can be just a bit too keen, and they just kind of let him do what he wants to do. And with the layoff, I think that may happen. I'm kind of hoping that it does, because I do think he's eligible to win, but he's going to be a little bit shorter on the tote board, I think, also. So while I will be using him, I'm also using the 1 who I think is going to have first shot at him, Michelle Nevin, who's coming off of a long layoff, 5 years old, has only run 3 times, but both of his efforts on turf have been very good. Time forms, pace, and speed figures are strong. I think he's legit. So if he's fit and ready to go, I think he poses a big danger, because I think he's going to have a clean look at Yinzer. Hopefully they don't hook up. Like I said, these layoff horses, they tend to be a little bit keyed up. So I'm hoping that Starship Titan, that's not the case with that one, and he can just stalk. I will be using both of those. My top pick is going to be Plensa for George Arnold. Lescano rides. This one's just been unlucky at the draw, far outside posts in 3 of his last 3 races. Florent Giroux, I'm not a big fan of. He's a passenger, in my opinion. Caught a slow pace last time. Stormed home. Had been running against much better before that. Graded Stakes Company did win a huge race at Kentucky Downs. I mean, he's won $1.3 million. Lescano getting on for me is an upgrade. I'm just not a big Florent fan. That's just me, especially coming from off the pace. I followed this horse a little bit because I liked him in that Kentucky Downs race, and I didn't bet him because of Florence. So hopefully we can work out a trip for him. If they go fast enough, I think he poses a big threat at what I think will be a big number. I also like Candy Town a little bit. So I had 8-7-1-4 as my probable uses in this race. Candy Town for Pletcher, who's been cold. That kind of bothers me a little bit. But if you watch this replay, you'll notice Irad did not try at all to tuck in this race. I think this was an absolute prep for today. He hadn't run in about 7 or 8 months going into that race at Saratoga last time. He wasn't. I don't think for that race he was bet a whole lot. I can't recall what he was morning line, but I don't seem to remember him being bet a whole lot like he was live. I think that was a prep for today. I like Zayas. I don't know where Irad is today. I noticed he's not riding.
No, he's on suspension till Sunday.
Okay. That makes sense because I did see him on the Sunday card. But yeah, Zayas riding. He obviously knows this horse well. He's ridden him multiple times. And he's got a win on his back. So 8-7-1-4 for me. But I'll be curious to see how this, how the pace shakes out. If the 1 and the 2 hook up or rather the 1 and the 4 hook up on the front end, I tend to think that when things percolate up front, anybody can win. So it's tougher to find a closer on paper than it is a speed horse. So we'll see, how that shakes out up front. But if they leave each other alone, I like my chances with those 4.
Yeah, the interesting part about this race is you have, 4 horses coming off long layoffs, including, 2 of them that you mentioned, or actually 3 of them that you mentioned, Yenzer, Starship Titan, and the 1 Starship Titan, the 2 Unit Economics, and the 4 Yenzer, all coming off long layoffs. And then you have 2 horses that are coming off of a prep, off a long layoff. Those are the other 2 you mentioned, Plenza and Candy Town. My inclination is always to like the horses second off the layoff more than the ones off the layoff. Doesn't mean they don't fire off the bench, but, especially if the comeback effort wasn't bad and they may even had some excuse, or it was clearly a prep, like you're saying, it looked like it to you on the race with Candy Town. Then I tend to lean towards the ones that have a race under their belt. Sounds like that might not be why you're doing it, but that's kind of how you're leaning in this race as well.
Yeah, I like those second-time 4-year-olds as well. I don't mind the layoff. The long layoff on turf, I don't mind. It's the one at 6 furlongs where they're feeling the sting for 3/4 of a mile. It's just a lot harder to sprint for the entire race. Rather than, you kind of just jog around the track and then you sprint for home. It's almost like they're only really running, a quarter mile, 5/16 of a mile. It's that turn of foot in turf racing, but we'll see what happens. And, that layoff with the 2, not a real big fan of. The horse Unit Economics is 6 years old. He's only run 8 times, whereas the layoff for Yenzer doesn't bother me a whole lot. He just hasn't been seen in his 4-year-old campaign. So I actually think it's almost like a bonus. He has an opportunity to move up, to mature. And he's run 12 times. And he's done all of that through his 3-year-old career. So much different kinds of layoffs between those 2. And I'm siding with the Asmussen and Yenzer between them.
Yeah, plus the layoff horses connections tend to get bet. So like with the Chad Brown layoff horse, they get bet regardless. And so I'm more interested in horses off the layoff if it's not a connection, not the kind of connections they get bet. And the horse maybe has run well off the layoff before. The barn does okay, with layoff horses. But I agree with you in general. Turf routes are probably the easiest race to get fit for because they don't only run, like you said, the last quarter of a mile. And a lot of the horses, that's the only time they put any real effort into the race. Quite a bit different than, say, like a dirt sprint where they're pretty much all out or at least running pretty hard from, gate to wire.
Yeah, you see a lot of these slower half-mile works leading into these long layoff turf races where they can just, they can get them in shape that way. Whereas, these sprinting races, you might see a real fast half from the gate or something like that. Like, okay, we got to get you ready. think it's easier to train into those races as well. In fact, I don't even think Chad Brown, his percentage off of a year layoff is probably just as good as it is if the horse is in form and, training regularly and racing regularly.
Yeah, and they get bet that way.
They do. It's all baked into the price anyway, like you said.
All right, so I don't have much to add. This race I probably won't be betting at all.
Don't be a fun sucker. Don't be a fun sucker, Chris. We got the start of the pick five. I mean,
I probably won't be playing the pick five in this case. There's really nothing that gets me interested. Maybe, the one thing I will say, the one horse you didn't mention, Wally World, he's in, he's not coming off second off a long layoff. He's second off like what I call a freshening. He's shipping in from Gulfstream, which always makes you a little bit nervous, but he's run well outside of Gulfstream, including in New York. And, he would benefit if the pace cooks up any. So to me, he's kind of the horse that if the pace were to cook up, he's going to run his race. And his race is probably capable of winning this with a good trip. And he has a pretty good post, pretty good rider. And, he may be the one that could benefit from a faster pace if the 4 and the 1 decide to hook up early. But at 5-1, I'm not interested in him at all. But if somehow he gets overlooked, if people are, interested more in the other horses we talked about, and he were to float up, this is one where I could watch the odds board and maybe get interested in a horse like that.
Yeah, he wouldn't surprise me. He's a slight fade for me just because I slightly downgraded that trip. I thought he had a good trip, but he did nothing wrong. Typically for me, when it comes to like watching these trips, the horses that have good trips that are tactical or they're in front, the downgrades, those horses are working out their own trip. The closers tend to need a little bit of help. He did get a little bit of help. And in terms of just the downgrades from closers versus speed horses, the closers are they overcome the downgrade less often than do the speed horses. So, like I say, it wouldn't surprise me. He just won't be on my tickets.
Yeah, like I said, he's not a kind of horse that makes his own trip. He'll be pace dependent.
Yeah,
but he gets a good rider upgrade, I think. And last time Gaffleon, who's the rider, I think, was on him. He won. And he actually overcame a pretty slow pace that day to win. So he doesn't always have to have a setup. So
and he's
he's not a bad horse. That's what I'm saying. He's the kind of horse that, if he's 5-1, I don't have any interest at all. I just have a feeling he could float up above that price in here, and that's the one horse I could maybe get interested in if that does happen. If it doesn't, I would not interested at all at the morning line.
Yeah, I do like Micah Husbands. I agree with you. It's a rider upgrade, but if you guys are out there and you're playing Gulfstream, don't be afraid of that guy. He's actually pretty good.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't trying to degrade his abilities.
Oh, yes, you were, Chris. We all know you're a terrible human being, and you're throwing shade in every jockey's direction.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's move on to the next race, which is the 8th. It's another allowance, but this one's 5.5 furlongs, a turf sprint for 3-year-olds and up. And here, not sure we're going to have a standout favorite. We got kind of maybe 3 horses vying for favoritism. Probably the 2 Bosun. He's 7-2. The 1 Cyclonite 9-2, and the 8 Gypsy Art. Those are probably the 3 that will take the money. Is there any of those 3 you're looking to play, or anything else you're interested in this race?
I do like Cyclonite. Pratt is pretty easy to read in terms of like his riding style. This horse hadn't spent a penny halfway through the far turn, and I think he was going to win when he got wiped out. Manny Franco, I believe it was Manny, tipped off of heels and clipped and went down, and Cyclonite was just completely eliminated. I thought, like I said, I thought he was going to win last time. Same condition. Does need a little bit of help, I believe, in terms of pace, but he is drawn inside. Ortiz climbs aboard for Cassie, who Cassie's horses have been like firing all over the country now for a little while. So the barn's going well. I like that. And I don't mind Pratt getting off as much as I love Pratt. I don't mind him getting off for a runner that he's ridden before. No Evidence is a little bit sneaky for me. He was going to be in the 4 that I use. Man, I'm just like throwing. I'm like the shotgun, just buckshot, just throwing out all these darts. I have got 1, 10, 8, 9 in this race. So I am going to be 4 deep again, but I do like the 9, No Evidence. I'm taking those 2 good turf course races with a grain of salt. Prior to that, he had run against Governor Sam a couple times on turf, who's a real pro. And Pratt climbing aboard that one is interesting for me. I do like, at a big price, I think, because of the turf, I do like Oil Capital. McLean's Music, a very good turf sprinting sire. First time turf, drawn outside. I think Grunge makes the lead in here. The horse that he's moving back to the turf. He's 1 for 1 on turf, got cut up in a very fast pace at Presque Isle. That's a line through. I think he's going to try and make the lead again. And I think Oil Capital just sits out there and stalks. If Grunge is no good against winners, which can happen, and he's laid down before, he could inherit the lead and be tough to catch, and he's going to be a big price. Linda Rice, I don't know where Kendrick is either.
I don't have the answer to that one.
Yeah, but I do like Manny Franco not having to make decisions. The guy can really ride, but he tends to the first glimpse of open air, he really gets aggressive a lot of times, and I call him red light, green light because he just gets stopped and then he goes again. But stalking from out there, I like Manny Franco getting on this horse, and he's going to be a big price. And then the last horse I thought could win was the 8 Gypsy Art, who's been a pro sprinting on turf. He's only gotten it done once, but his last race was really, really good, in my opinion. The start is understated. It says bumped start. He lost quite a few positions and should be forward coming out of those 5/8 turf races, moving to that extra 16th of a mile. That 5/8 is a totally different animal than the 5.5 or 6, as I'm sure you know. So, yeah, I'm pretty deep in here. It'll be interesting to see what plays out in terms of pace. Like I said, I think that Grunge goes. I think there's a horse inside that could go with him, but it's Kendrick to Lascano. Lascano's just much more patient than Kendrick get. That horse is Quando, the horse that I'm talking about. Sweeping Shadow gets blinkers, but Zayas tends to be a little bit more patient also. So I couldn't figure this race from a pace standpoint. So I kind of wanted to take all angles. So I've got a tactical horse, a couple tactical horses, and then a couple closers. But curious to see who you have as well.
Well, from a pace perspective, I think you hit on the 3. It's just the 3 horses that are probably the ones most likely to be forward. It does seem like those inside horses, though, are being inside. They're probably going to go, I would think. At least one of those 2 would, the rider. I don't see the advantage, like especially on the 4, to not going. That horse likes to be on the lead, and he's drawn inside. We'll see. So I don't think it's going to be a fast pace, but I think I'd be a little surprised if the 7 got away with an easy lead or anything in here. But you never know in New York, especially. But it is a turf. It is a turf sprint, so you would hope that some of them will be, at least trying to get good position early. And from the inside, that kind of means you have to hustle. The 10 I was kind of interested in too. Just I never get excited about a Linda Rice horse because 2 out of 3 of them scratch when I think they're playable. So, if they're going to be a price, he usually scratches them, and it's through the outside. So I don't know. I'm just never. I don't like playing her horses just because you can never rely on them actually going into the gate. The one horse that I will mention that you didn't, because I think you hit on most of the contenders, and I don't really have much to add, would be the 6-horse Forgiving Spirit. That horse I like quite a bit in here. I thought his last few trips have been less than ideal in all cases. I think they kind of made him a dirt horse over the winter, but I think, out in California, he was all turf. I think he might be better on turf, but he certainly is good on turf as dirt. And, I think his last races have been better than they look, and he'll get completely overlooked in here. And I think his best effort can definitely win this race. So, for me, that kind of horse at double-digit odds, those are the kind I'm interested in.
Yeah, May 23rd, I didn't like that race, but that was over a good turf course. And if I'm willing to excuse the race from no evidence, it would make sense that I would be willing to excuse that one as well. It's just that common, that common race. But yeah, at a big price.
You didn't think that he kind of was in traffic and just didn't want to he was in a bad spot there. I thought.
Well, as the race progressed, he did, but I felt like he kind of got outrun to land in that position. He was just the pace was quick early. He wasn't far from it, and when it came time to like maintain his position, he was kind of just average before he got stuck like in between. I hate that in between spot, just like you do. But I thought he kind of should have worked out something better than what he got.
That and the condition of the course. I mean, from a numerical standpoint, one thing that I like that Timeform US does is they kind of put a rating, and they rated that course as a 4 on a 1 to 10 scale. That's pretty slow. That's pretty off. Even though it's labeled good, that 4 is more like slow yielding kind of.
Yeah. And it shows up in the fractions too, right? They went 23 and they finished in 12-1, which is
unusual for
previous race. Yeah. I mean, they went sub 22 and they finished 7-4. So I see where you're coming from. Maybe I'll add him. Maybe I'll launch him into the sequence as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide open race. This is why I want to kind of demand a price. I wouldn't disagree with you on a Cyclonite, but 9-2, I'm not really interested. And Oil Capital is the other one I was kind of thinking. There's a little more speculative with that one because you just don't know if it's going to handle the turf, and you don't even know if it's going to start. But I could kind of see that horse possibly getting a good trip if Manny just stalks and the other two hook up early, and he kind of gets that first run on them without going too wide on the turn. He could trip out a bit there, but there's a lot of ifs there. Whereas for me, Forgiving Spirit, he's run a lot of races that put him right there in here, and he's going to be double-digit odds. And he may not win, but I think he's going to be there's going to be value in playing him. He's certainly not a win machine, but he's won races before, and he's run a lot of pretty good races that would fit in here. And I do think
relative to this field, he's an absolute win machine.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So I mean, these are this condition. These are professional losers. So yeah, I think he makes a lot of sense in that respect. Actually, the one thing about Cyclonite, he's 0 for 15 on grass. 5 seconds, 4/3. But
is it that's not good?
That's not good. That's not good, Bob. But he did have no blinkers last time, and man, I'm telling you, Pratt, he was going to win that race. He was going to win that race. So I've almost put him out of this condition. Like no blinkers, he was winning that race. I wouldn't mind 9-2. Actually, I'm not going to make a win bet on him, but if I advance and take 9-2, I would accept.
Yeah, in horizontal plays, I definitely see using him. He's not going to be the favorite, and especially with Pratt off, although Jose Ortiz has been riding pretty well. It's not like he's going to be odds on or anything. He's just not the kind of horse that I'd want to play to win. Forgiving Spirit I'm a lot more forgiving with him. I don't think he's really much less likely, if any less likely to win than Cyclonite, and he'll be twice the price, probably, maybe more.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say is that I really, even though I gave Bosun a slight upgrade, coming out of that race at the fairgrounds. Jose rode him that day. He was 2-1. He had a bad trip, a troubled trip. He was the favorite. He rides for Joe Sharp. He's not riding back, and he jumps on the 1. I'm curious to know which to me makes the 9 pretty attractive. We start playing this jockey. They're just switching chairs all the time. Who knows what's going to happen? But I do feel like between the 1, the 2, and the 9, you can get a feel that Jose likes the 1 more than the 2, and Pratt might really like the 9. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the 9 has a kind of pattern I like, where it ran pretty well on its comeback after a layoff and first time gelding, and then, like we said, if you just excuse maybe that track didn't suit him on this last race, now he should be really fit and ready to run his best race. He's not super fast speed wise though. But at 8, that's why you're getting the 8-1. And, so I would be more interested in a horse like No Evidence at 8-1 or Oil Capital 12-1 than I would be, Bosun or Cyclonite at much shorter prices.
Yeah.
In a race like this, and Gypsy Art's the same sort of thing. I actually think that horse might be the best horse in here. It's had a lot of less than ideal trips as well. But it seems like a horse that just kind of creates its own problems. But, it is getting a rider switch and, at a new track, and certainly turf sprinting. Wesley Ward knows what he's doing. But again, the price isn't going to get me interested. But that horse, to me, has a lot of talent to never run a bad race. It hasn't run that many races. It still probably has some upside. And now it's, like you said, the last couple were at 5 furlongs. Maybe a little bit longer isn't going to hurt this horse at all. So that outside post might work in its favor. So, that's another one. Pretty wide open race, which is why I want a price. But, I think you can make a case for almost all of the contenders in here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Tough race.
It is. The first 2 been tough, probably from a betting standpoint. For me, only the 6 Forgiving Spirit is probably the only one that's got me interested. Although Oil Capital, I'll keep an eye on that one. Watch the board and see if he actually makes the gate. Then we go to the 9th, a third straight allowance race. This one's on the dirt though, going a mile, banned for state bred, so quite a bit different and a relatively small field. The 2 Tricky Business, lightly raced, looked really good on debut, kind of was overmatched last time. Probably going to be a solid favorite in here. There's some other alternatives. What are you thinking in here?
I hate this race. I hate this race. To me, these 1 mile dirt races at Saratoga, they're like chewing glass. I hate that gap early. I feel like the rail horses try to blast through that and hold their spot. When you're drawn outside, I feel like those horses get stuck wide because everyone is like blasting off at the inside. I'm just not a fan of these races. The fields a lot of times are shorter. And in this race in particular, I think the race is difficult. There's only 7 horses. I can't make the winner. So I don't like the race. I will say Tricky Business had an excuse last time. Got knocked around a little bit at the start. Was off slow. Had to steady a little bit. I had this one losing nearly 2 lengths at the start. Then recovered, ran just as fast as the leader did entering the clubhouse turn, and then got a very cautious self-induced shuffle where this one lost ground and landed at the back of the pack. So against stake horses, that was never going to bode well. Actually made a decent move in the far turn and then just spit the bit in the lane. So that was a line through for me. If you're willing to excuse it, which I am on paper, he makes a lot of sense. He broke his maiden first time out, going a mile at Aqueduct, gets a mile today. It's a non-winner 1 state bred condition. So on paper, he makes a lot of sense. I'd actually prefer he not be putting on blinkers. But anyway, he gets them today. Pratt rides again, rode him first time out, in victory. So he makes a lot of sense to me. I can excuse the effort. The 4 makes a lot of sense. Pratt gets off this horse. I upgraded this one nicely. I thought this one had a miserable trip. This is that upside down dirt race that I was talking about earlier. The pace was slow. This one had an exacerbated fraction. This horse kind of moved up
You're
the
talking
rail.
about the 4-horse Toscano, right?
Toscano, yeah. Just kind of gained, was kind of just placed in the pocket. And then Pratt gave up on this horse. And if you know anything about Pratt, he tries. He tries all the time. So for him to give up well outside of the furlong pole when minor placings were, they were competing for the minors in this race, and he let this one coast in off of a long layoff. That was notable to me. So I expect this one to move up second time off the layoff. And King Faro is just fast. Very fast fractions last time. Didn't even break that well. Moved early, got placed on hold. It was kind of this start and then stop action for King Faro, and he did it into the teeth of a very fast pace, which for me was notable. I think he makes the lead, and that makes him dangerous. So, I've got multiple horses in here, and I can't, the Chad horse, I have to think he has a chance. I thought his race was just fine last time. He seems to be in good form and should work out a good trip tactically from the outside in a race where you have a clear leader drawn almost immediately to his inside, and Sunday Boy is taking back. So I think, Judge Boucher works out a good trip. So hate the race. I think there's 4 horses that can win this race, and I will not be involved in anything other than a pick 5.
So in the pick 5, how would you play this race?
Well, if I were smart, I would probably play, A's and B's. I could see me singling Tricky Business on a ticket and then playing a Caveman ticket where I spread, because I do have a single later that I like a little bit. So, I could play a smaller ticket with Tricky Business and single. But outside of that, I think those 4 have the best chance to win. I don't like the others. The 1 is just no good. If he wins, I will lose. The 3 had a good trip last time. No excuse. He's no good to me. And the 6, I'm not a fan of his either, even though Jose Ortiz from Elliott is just a massive rider upgrade. Just not a fan of any of his races.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to what you said. I probably, if I were, the only way to play this race, if I wanted to play the horizontals and included this, and I would probably just single Tricky Business, because his debut effort, he crushed Judge Boucher and King Pharaoh. That was on debut. So, it's hard to go against him in here. The only horse I would be more worried about might be the 4 Toscano. That's a horse he hasn't crushed before. And like you said, that one's going second off the layoff. Maybe that probably needed that race. That was more of a prep. But I still think, Tricky Business is already on debut ran as fast as anything Toscano's ever run. So it's hard for me to go against him. If I was going to play this, I would probably single the 2. And he may not win, but I wouldn't want to spend money on any other horses. They seem like a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, the reason why I'm a little bit, like I said, on one of my tickets, I could if I were smart, but it's just the blinkers. Why the blinkers? If you're willing to excuse the last effort, which I am, why the hood? We'll see what happens, but I do like Pratt getting aboard, and I think he leaves a live runner. I think he leaves a live runner that wasn't even meant to win last time, even though he was 3-1. So.
Yeah, and Tricky Business, I would never bet him to win. It's just, he could get bet in here too. He may end up going off at 4-5, but if he doesn't, if they really play some of these other horses, let's just put it this way, I don't think he's like the obvious single on everybody's ticket in the pick 5 or the pick 4. So I don't mind singling him.
Yeah.
So. All right. Anything else on that one before we go to the one stakes race in the sequence, which is the Grade 2 Bowling Green, close to the turf marathon, 11 furlongs, 1.3 miles on the inner turf for 3-year-olds and up. In this race, we've got 3 horses at a small field of 7, but 3 all vying for favoritism. The one old Crazy Bone, kind of the standard, gets in the maker barn, he stretches them out, and they start winning big races. That's the one horse, kind of prototype for that kind of horse. You got the 4, a nice Euro horse shipping in, Fort George. And you got the 6, Minaret Station, who just has not really done anything wrong. Will Walden has really been training lights out ever since he started training. Those 3 vying for favoritism. Have you got one of those 3 you like, or you like somebody outside those 3?
I could potentially single the one. The one's got tactical speed. There's no speed in here. I'd be willing to bet quite a bit of money this horse owns the pocket throughout in a race that isn't run all that fast early. So he is a potential single. He's a distance special. I mean, he got beat by Tawny Port, who came back and won the Belmont Gold Cup, right? So even the horses that he's handled have come back to perform well. Man, Chris, why didn't we claim old Crazy Bone for 100 dimes? We'd be so loaded right now. We'd be using all in every sequence. But I do like him. He was the potential single for me in the pick 5 sequence. Fort George is interesting. He had a miserable trip in that Dubai turf race. The 2 to 5 favorite won that race. I don't know who he is, but if he's 2 to 5 in a Group 1 in Dubai, that's a big deal. I didn't bother researching who the horse was, but that horse won comfortably. And
well, let's just say it was Ombudsman, who would be 1 to 5 in here, and Rebels Romance before that, who would be 2 to 5 in here. So he's been facing some good horses recently.
Okay.
Made on. Yeah.
Okay, and so he was second to Rebels Romance. He just had a misery. He moved early last time. He was about 4 or 5 lengths in arrears after the first quarter. And then he moved up and he was pressing like 3. I had him 3-3+ wide through the far turn. It was a death trip. So that was a death march. Draw a line through that race. The rest of his European form and other form looks good. Potentially lone speed, assuming that none of these want to go.
Yeah, he does like to be forward in his races.
He does. And there's no real heat in here that I can find. So a lot of these horses like to come from the clouds. That's why I said I'd be shocked if old Crazy Bone didn't own the pocket. And if he doesn't, he's going to be in front. I really can't see anything in here that's taking on like kind of added distance that could show speed. I guess Minaret Station could. That one concerns me because just the turf courses that this one's been running at are totally different than the Saratoga Inner. He's had opportunities to come from off the pace at Keeneland and Churchill, where you get those long stretches. You get a sweeping turn and a long stretch at Keeneland, and then a really long stretch at Churchill over those turf courses. And I looked at those races, and he's had good opportunities to just level on a flat, which I would assume he prefers. It's a lot different trying to circle versus, with that dealing with that centrifugal force and circle horses than it is just leveling down the straight. So I thought that was a little bit of knock for him. He did save ground and tip out nicely last time. The comments and the PPs are worthless. Bumped break was worth nothing. And then he was like mildly touched. I've seen mosquito bites do more damage than what this one felt in the lane. So no real trouble there, even though there's a trouble line. So he was a mild fade for me, even though he's in good form relative to the others. Anyway, a lot of chatter for a horse that I may single in Old Crazy Bone.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Old Crazy Bone, he's probably going to get a good trip, like you said, on the rail with Pratt. He is spotting weight to the other horses, so that's one thing that'd be a little bit of a concern. But, he's going to run his race. I think what his race is. He doesn't really have upside, but he's going to he's going to run a good race. So I could see him certainly being a winner. Uh, Minaret Station, this horse has never run a bad race, but never been this far, even close to this far. So, and a lot of times, horses that have that really strong closing punch, they're more the middle distance turf horses, not so much the marathoners. Those tend to be ones that grind a little more and just kind of rely on stamina late as opposed to a big kick. So I'm not sure he'll be as good, but Will Walden, it seems like anything he sends out he manages to run good on any surface, any distance. So I wouldn't discount any of those two. To me, Fort George is clearly the best of the three. I mean, he's just was running against much, much tougher competition. And, these longer distances, I always lean towards the Europeans. And he's not like a plodding Euro. He likes to be forward. His best distance is probably, between 1.25 miles and 1.5 miles. So this is, right in his wheelhouse. But we've seen a couple of these chippers last weekend go to Saratoga that looked really good on paper that didn't fire. So there's always that question. But I think if he fires, he wins. It's simple as that. He's the best horse. But he may not fire. And we saw, like I said, we saw that even as recently as last week at Saratoga. So I'm willing to maybe take a shot against those big three on an upside horse. And for me, that's the 2 Soleil Volant, who is a 4-year-old. It doesn't sound young, but for turf routers, a lot of the 4-year-olds more like a 3-year-old in the dirt. And this horse is out of a lemon drop kid mare, so it's probably supposed to get better with distance and age. And it's done that. If you look, its best 2 races of his life were its most recent 2, or they stretched it out to the longer distances. I think it has upside. I'm not going to say it had bad trips or anything in those races, but I just like the fact that it's getting better with the distance. It's had a couple marathons, so now it's more used to the routine. It's not going to be far behind. I would expect it to be sitting on the rail behind Old Crazy Bone. And I don't know if Old Crazy Bone's on the lead or second or third. He'll just be just in behind. Think he could get a really good trip. Again, I'm not a big rider upgrade, but an upgrade to Gaffleon, I think. And Graham Motion with turf routers, he's always really good with these. So, that horse will be double-digit odds. Could go even higher because I think almost all the money is going to flow to those 3. That's the kind of horse I could get behind. Although I would probably play it to win, but maybe in exactas under, certainly at least under Fort George, maybe also under Old Crazy Bone. But that's the kind of horse I could get behind. Soleil Volant, the improving 4-year-old, clearly has relished going longer and still has some upside.
I gave that one a nudge forward for his effort last time. The pace was honest. When I define a pace as honest, obviously I can't use the figures, but to me that's the tempo quickens before the first half of the race is completed. So they might have a normal pace early, but then they pick it up a little bit. And he was stuck uncovered and gaining into that. And did well to be second in that race. So I did nudge him forward.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to improve a little to win, certainly to beat Fort George if he fires. But, Fort George might not fire. Minaret Station might not get the distance. Old Crazy Bone, is probably not going to get any better. So, that there's a lot of ifs in there. That's why I want a price. But I think I could get even more than that 12-1. So, again, this is the kind of horse I'm willing to speculate on a bit. In a race where there are some question marks with the favorites. Anything else on that one?
No, I think we got it covered. If one of the others wins, maybe we're doing a little Thelma and Louise.
Yeah, well, you could make. There's some points. The 3 Desvio and the 5 Carson's Run. They both aren't bad. I just don't think they're quite at this caliber, but they're not that far behind. And if the favorites don't fire, there's no reason they couldn't win. So I wouldn't throw them out, but
I would.
Okay.
I really don't like the 3. The 3 and the 2 just ran against each other. Common race at Delaware. In that stake race, Desvio was covered up, had pace to target, clean chance at the rail, and just was not good enough. Was 7-2 that day. Johnny rides back, which I don't know.
Yeah,
I
and plus
guess.
he's spotting weight. He's spotting weight to other horses in here too.
I'm not a fan of that horse. I thought Soleil Vallon was much better than that one. So
all right. Well, anyway, so he has run some decent races in the past, but I agree. I don't like the way he's coming in this race. Same with Carson's run. He's run some decent races in the past, but his last 2 haven't been very good. But they have races on their form that fit if they were to run back to those. But I don't see any reason to expect them to in this particular race.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of variety in the races, distances, surfaces, class, and now we finish it off with the classic payoff leg in the final race at NYRA tracks. They always like to give these maiden special weight state bred horses on the turf with a big field. They don't want to make it easy to cash anything late. And that's what we got here. The favorite, probably the 2 that will vie for favoritism are the 10 Coach Ryan, a Chad Brown horse, and the 5 Carson, who ran pretty well on debut, making a second start, and it's got Flavian Pratt on board. Of course, you'll probably pay the tax on both of those, but they're the likely favorites. Are you liking one of those 2, or are you looking elsewhere in this race?
Either could win. They wouldn't surprise me. Karsten, watch this one on tape. Javi it's a really bad ride. There's no way around it. He does not let this horse do any settling on his own. He's in between 70 yards into the race, and he just reserves this horse. The horse is out of position. The pace got a mid-race breather, and he finished just fine to barely miss running into a better placing. So the move from Javi to Pratt is a big one for this horse. I do think he's going to improve, and he could win. And Coach Ryan, I mean, if you're a big speed figure guy, I mean, I'm assuming everyone's looking at the PPs from the daily racing form. I'm not a buyer guy. If I'm using them at all, it's as a barometer. This horse ran faster than most of these did as a 2-year-old, and he's coming to this off a layoff for Chad. I expect this one to have moved up.
Been gelded too.
He's been gelded. He gets Lasix. The race was strong. I mean, that winner came back and won $125,000 stake against state breds. The 4th and 5th place finishers came back to win against maiden special weight state breds. And actually the 5th place finisher, I'm pretty sure won a non-winner one right after he broke his maiden. So the race is legit. That being said, he did have a very good trip that day. They went fast early. He got covered up. He rated well. He had a clean shot all the way around the track. I'm not so sure where the comments are coming from. Steadied out of the quarter. I mean, he just tipped into the clear. I thought he had a good shot, and he is drawn poorly. So if there's a knock on him, that would be it. He had a good trip. He's coming off a layoff, and he's drawn poorly. There are several horses in here that are interesting. Classic Commander, I gave a good upgrade to. I'm not a big fan of these deep closers on turf, but he was the comments get it right. He was ranked last time. He burned some fuel. He didn't get away all that great. He finished very well through. I had what I call prolonged bad spots in between spots, and he ran into that place position. I thought deserved extra credit for that.
He galloped out strong too.
He did gallop out. He galloped out in front. His cadence seemed average to me, but he did gallop out past the others, and he did make the lead through the clubhouse turn. So he deserves some credit for that. He wouldn't surprise me. The horse that interests me quite a bit at a big price is Run Caught. Mendelssohn's are capable on grass. He was 15-1 morning line, didn't get bet a whole lot on debut, but it was a 13-horse field. and he was 15 morning line, one morning line. You could expect him to drift up for a low percentage barn, but it's not like he was bet like a terrible, terrible thing. I mean, he was 26-1 versus some of these that you see in these huge fields go off at 50, 60 plus to 1. So he's fast. He drew the outside. He was sent hard for speed. I think they knew that he was fast, and they tried, but maybe he gets better when he's lonely in front, which I do think is going to be the case today. I think he makes a loose lead. Of those that have run, don't see any speed in here. Certainly not any lead speed. So I expect him to be clear in front. If he can rate well and take to the long game on grass, he becomes dangerous, and he's going to be a huge price. So he's definitely going to be on my tickets. The 8, Imperial Anthem, coming out of that same race on June 7th, the finale, was fidgety in the gate, was a little bit nervous, blew the start. Tossed his head. He kind of leapt in the air a little bit. Hated the kickback. He raced high need. It looks like he's got some turfy action. It was just more about this horse climbing than anything. And then he was green going to the far turn, which you can only see from the head on. Javier was trying to get this one to save ground in the far turn, and he wasn't having any part of the kickback, and he drifted, and he ran wide all the way through the far turn. That race is a complete line through. Who knows what you get with him? He was 20-1 morning line. He wasn't bet at all, but capable barn, big jockey upswitch, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. Dylan versus Javi. I think Dylan is worlds better, and he climbs aboard. So that one is interesting to me. I think he'll be, who knows? These are just horses with upside that I will not be leaving off my ticket. Manor Park is another one. First time. I don't know what brought about this trainer change. I don't know if this is an assistant. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know this trainer. Do you, Chris?
No.
Okay.
That trainer's I'm guessing it might have been an assistant that's going out on its own now or something.
Okay.
I don't know anything about
19%, as I guess probably all we need to know. I thought had a bad turf trip last time. I upgraded this one nicely based on the last trip. Not a big fan of the draw, but Tyler climbing aboard for Manny doesn't bother me at all. I think they're kind of similar in terms of their riding styles and how good they are. I'll be using him. I know you don't like Linda Rice. I wanted to like this Maxfield horse that's drawn to the far outside just because this horse has a fast work, and Maxfield is, he stands in Kentucky. So I always give these horses that stand in Kentucky an extra long look when they come in versus these state breds. Because I don't think we have some weird rule now where the horses fold in New York, and I guess it's okay to basically have a Kentucky bred. But I think I'm probably going to fade that one, but he wouldn't surprise me either.
Well, drawing the 11 hole, a 99% chance the horse scratches probably. So that'd be my prediction on that horse.
Okay. Well,
especially if it's live. If it's
Yeah.
not live, then I mean, if it's not live, they'll probably leave it in, let it get a race. But she's the queen of scratches, and this is a good one for her to scratch. If she thinks it's live and they're going to try to win with it, probably won't want to go in 11 horse field.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So that one, I did a little bit deeper dive on that. It was just the breeding. Even though Maxfield does stand in Kentucky, 6% as a turf route sire. So I thought maybe this could be a prep anyway. So we'll see. But I think this is one of those races where you could see a big number because the 5 and the 10 do look legitimate. Neither would surprise me. But you have these unknowns where I'm like, man, there's some upside with this horse. Runcott is fast. Imperial Anthem completely eliminated. He actually finished up okay in the lane. And then you've got these others with Manor Park, and Classic Commander that are deserving of some looks as well. Who did you come up with?
Well, I agree with you that there's, and probably of the ones you've mentioned, Runcott, just because he flashed so much early speed in that first race. And now, they're putting him on a new surface. He's by Mendelssohn out of Scat Daddy. So, I mean, there's reason to think this horse could handle the surface switch and could be on the lead, right? So that's always dangerous. I totally agree with you there. Imperial Anthem was just, like you said, that was a complete throwout race. The horse lost all chance at the start. So, it's just, I'm treating that one like a first time starter on a new surface. And seems like it's bred to go long, more to go long than short anyway. So I can see those two. Manor Park as well. I just have that one's not as big a price as those other two. But I could see that one. But I actually have a couple more I like quite a bit too in here.
Okay.
One, the Professor Proton down on the rail. That horse ran a pretty nice race, 7 furlongs on the dirt, and the breeding would say that it could certainly switch to the turf. And it ran a number, if it translates to the turf, it certainly could win, and it could improve off of that. And it draws the rail, so should get a ground saving trip and should be somewhat forward because it wasn't that far off the pace going 7 furlongs on the dirt. So you would think in a turf route, it ought to be up there getting a good trip. That horse 15-1 the morning line. And then the other one I like is the 7 Tislari, who on debut ran really well on the turf. Then they tried it on a couple dirt races that didn't run well. Then they laid it up and brought it back on the turf. And it didn't run particularly well, but it was sort of hung wide throughout. And, it probably needed that race off the layoff. Now it goes second off the layoff. If you project improvement off its debut as a 2-year-old in November, it definitely could win this race. And it's 20-1 in the morning line. So it's a couple more that I think have the potential to really outrun their odds. And a race that I think you got to look for a price and try to beat those favorites.
Yeah. I'll go along with the Tiz Lowry horse. I really do not like Professor Proton, but that's just me. I thought he had a good trip last time because the pace was so fast, and I agree that he did nothing wrong. But I don't like Johnny V staying in the room when Henning might have a live horse. He tends to ride a lot for Henning in these kinds of situations, and I don't see him. I don't see him in the race, which for me was a pretty big negative. But we'll see. At a big price, which I can't remember what you say. I print my forms without the morning lines. Do you say 15-1?
Yeah.
That kind of gets me to listen more often than it might otherwise. But you I think your where your head is at with Tiz Lowry at 20-1 is probably going to get me to add that one.
Yeah, the horse debuted really nicely on the turf. You'd think it's a better horse now, especially second off the layoff. So we'll see. But that one seems pretty wide open. So on a wide open race like this, if you're a horizontal player, how are you playing this race?
Well, when it comes to the pick 5 writing, I will not line up the favorites. So what I'll tend to do is, because if it lines up chalk, you don't care, right? Like, okay, well, no big deal. I didn't miss out on anything. But for example, like if I single Old Crazy Bone, I might have some prices on that pick 5 ticket with the prices that we mentioned. If in the previous race and the 9th race, I talked about potentially singling tricky business on one ticket. Like if I use the other prices in that race, maybe I would include one of the 2 of the horses that I think are eligible to win. I'd probably fade the Chad Brown horse just because he'll probably be hammered. And I think he's got some negatives, even though I think he can win. So to me, it just comes into not writing tickets that favorites line up. Like if I like a double with like if I like a double that goes back to back, for example, with a couple of chalks, I'll just throw out the double that goes chalk. Like if I like 2x2, I'll just toss that one away and hope that they both don't win. might seem stupid to some people, but I'm okay not risking that money because you might be wrong anyway. I'm okay just not risking that money to line up an A ticket
When they're chalk.
when they're chalk. Yeah, just get rid of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
There's
And
no
so
other
you're
risk. You have to
right.
be willing to. You have to. As well as I do. You have to accept losing pretty easily in this game, knowing that you're going to outpace the others by hitting something that's deserving, something with value. So
Right. So you're playing multiple tickets and you're trying to avoid races where you're stringing together, multiple chalk on a ticket. Depending on what you're playing, like a pick five, maybe you could live with one or two chalks, but you're trying to avoid writing your tickets in a way that you end up cashing in underwater kind of thing, which
yeah, and
makes no sense at all.
exactly, and every situation is different. So like the other day, for example, I liked a horse from at Saratoga that I thought literally should have been like 2-1. He went off at 12-1. Like I loved this horse. I texted my buddy. I said, I think this horse is a free square. And so I'm okay singling him and then kind of cavemanning the rest, knowing that, okay, if a couple of chalks fall into there, I'm still live with my horse. And it's not like I went super deep anyway. But I think I put, I bet him in the double, I bet him in the pick three, and those both hit. So I did well. But then I played a pick five ticket or a pick four ticket. And I think I put in $180 and it was paying 25 dimes to the favorite in the last race because I was able to single a long shot. So I think if you're able to single that price and you're lucky enough to get that horse home, that's when the world opens. And that's when you kick yourself for not using an eligible favorite. If you don't like the favorite, you don't want to use them, don't use them. But if you don't want to use them because of a price and you have a long shot in that sequence, I think that's a mistake.
But that's because you've singled the long shot, and so you've got value
Correct.
on that ticket.
Correct.
If you play a caveman ticket that has the long shot in it, yeah, you might hit it, but you might not, and you might end up with a bunch of favorites on a big ticket that pays less than you put into it, or very little.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I just absolutely hate the third race of this sequence, which is the ninth, because I can't make the race. I think there are 4 horses that can win. Is there anything worse than using 4 horses and getting an eligible favorite? There's nothing worse than that.
Yeah, and we're looking at the sequence again. It does look like Tricky Business might be the one horse that gets singled the most in the sequence. I said he wasn't going to, but now I'm looking, and there really isn't. Maybe they could go with the Chad Brown unit economics of 2 horse in the first leg, the 7th race, but maybe the Chad Brown in the last race. But yeah. I don't know. It seems to me like Tricky Business might be, given the small field. He's beaten a couple of the other favorites in there. I kind of get the feeling that might be the heavily used single in the sequence. So if that's true, then maybe the way you have to play that race is one of 2 ways. A, you just try to beat the 2, and you're going to get value because he's going to be the most singled horse in the sequence. So even if you catch one of the other favorites, you're probably getting some value. Or B, you leave him off and then you play the others. Because I think then if you catch one of those favorites, you're still getting probably the most heavily used horse in the sequence out. So to me, that's the race where you got to decide either single 2 or try to beat him, but don't include him because then you're just leaking equity, I think. So that might be the key race in terms of how you play it.
Yeah, I think multiple tickets is the way to do it. You could press him a little bit because I think the sequence is actually pretty difficult overall. If you're singling him and he wins, it's really not going to hurt you, even if he is potentially the single on some tickets because.
Oh no, I agree. If
Yeah,
you single him, that I'm saying there's two ways to play it. Either you single him, and then you're not getting hurt. You're right. And or you try to beat him, and then you don't have to worry. Then you can spread. But what I'm saying is that the thing you don't want to do is play him along with all the favorites, unless you really, really play a lot of combinations and you're pressing the two a lot. But to me, that's one where if you're going to play the two, just play it. Don't get cute and try to back it up or anything. You're playing the most used horse in the sequence. Just live and die by that horse if you're going to play him.
I would agree with that. But if they would leave that race out of the sequence, I would really like that pick 4. That would be good. But
yeah. Well, you could always play the late double, right? And you could play the early double and before that. There are other. There's other pools, other horizontal pools, right?
No, Chris, we have to make every wager we can.
You have to play every pick 5.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things to talk about in the book. You don't have to play every pick 5 or whatever wager you like. You always should make sure that you wager in a way that is consistent with your opinion of that sequence or the race. So, and that's the long term. That's the way to do it. Sometimes you might get lucky, but you don't want to just count on getting lucky. Then you just turn this into a non-skill based gambling game, which is no fun. It's no more fun than playing a slot machine.
Yeah, well, I've never understood that. But yeah, I'm bummed. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about the sequence. Hopefully we can cash a couple bets. I'm bummed that Scott wasn't here. I know, Scott, you're listening probably. If I were handicapping Scott right now, I'd say he's not here on this call with us for one of a couple reasons. One is the last time we did the Breeders' Cup show, he was laughing so hard he might have peed his pants. And he didn't want to do that again. And the other possibility I would say is, women are undefeated. So he's probably got a girl somewhere and he's like, he's like, what do I need these 4-legged left turn animals for? I've got a cute girl who loves on me and I'm out. So Scott, if you're listening, man, I love you. Wish you were here to chat with so I could tell some uncouth jokes and make you laugh a little bit, but we held it down.
Yes, we managed without Scott, but it was always we had some fun shows for sure with the 3 of us on this podcast.
No doubt.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Ryan, for joining us this week on the podcast, and all the listeners out there. That the reason we do it. That'll wrap things up for today. That'll conclude show number 369 of the Sport of Kings podcast. Good luck this weekend. And please enjoy the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout.
Or Nipsey Hussle. Or Nipsey.
Okay. Or Nipsey. That's a wrap.